Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barzi. As always, if you like what you see and hear, give us a like, subscribe. Today, my guest is Elizabeth Haynes. And as the nurse who knows content, Elizabeth Haynes, BSN, RN, built a six-figure writing business in her spare time, working with such high-profile clients as WebMD and Healthgrades. Today, she teaches other nurses how to do the same thing through a variety of coaching packages and courses at rn2writer.com. And Elizabeth resides in New Mexico. Welcome so very much, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dale. I am honored to be on your podcast, truly.
Thank you. I appreciate your presence. I know how busy life can get. So let's just go right into this. You are a nurse, so tell me why. Why are you a nurse?
Why am I a nurse? Well, I'm a second career nurse.
Okay.
And I always wanted to be a nurse, but I lacked the self-confidence to go directly into nursing out of high school,
okay,
like many people do. And so at midlife, I suddenly had the opportunity to do an accelerated BSN program through the university I was working for. And I thought, this is my chance. So I did it and I loved it. I loved nursing for the most part. So I worked in the PACU primarily. And it was so wonderful to help people at such a vulnerable moment in their life, waking up from surgery, sometimes waking up uncertainly, you know, not knowing what that biopsy may have uncovered or that surgery, you know, and it was, I felt very privileged to be there with those patients and their family members in that moment. You know?
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So coming into nursing at midlife, as you say, what challenges were there? Did you have?
Well, we could do an entire podcast about that, Dale. First of all, I had never worked in healthcare at all.
Okay.
So I was very naive as to what the environment was like. Now, I have to say, though, my father had chronic health conditions his entire life. So actually, I had been in the healthcare system a lot as a family member. But the challenges were not only understanding the role of the nurse within healthcare. That was big for me. I honestly always was a little uncertain of what my actual role was. The stamina required at coming into it at, gosh, what was I, 50, a little under 50 years old, having to be up early doing clinicals. There was a lot of stamina required.
Yes.
I would say those were my major challenges personally.
Yeah. So you came into nursing from what career?
Well, I had been in administration, office work, had risen into middle management, which is a terrible job. Middle management. So I had been in the business world and my entire career, but I was never satisfied with it. I job hopped before job hopping was a thing. So
yeah. And so you almost went right into post anesthesia care. That's quite a big leap. That's, you know.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that I attended University of New Mexico, and they had a very good residency program. And so I was able to do, I felt like going into nursing. I don't know if this is common because, again, I didn't do a traditional program.
Yeah.
I had an idea from the beginning that if I was going to go into nursing, I wanted to be in the surgical milieu, perioperative. And so I was able to do a residency in the recovery room, and I absolutely loved it. And also, of course, got to rotate into the OR, which I also loved. And at the end of my career, I was working a lot in the OR, and I loved that.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, but it is a big leap because it's going from nursing school to critical care.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and no, I look back on that and think, no wonder I felt out of my depth a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yes, indeed. So then you transitioned into writing.
Yes, I actually had been a writer before I was a nurse.
Okay.
Early in my career, very early, the first professional job I really ever had, I was the PR coordinator for the YMCA of the Pikes Peak region in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
And so I did that for, I think, 5 years, and of course wrote tons of press releases and started understanding a little bit about how the PR and marketing and journalism industries intersected. And actually, as I talk about in my book, Design Your Dream Career as a Nurse Writer, it was when I was interacting with journalists that I discovered that freelance writing was a thing. Like, all these journalists also freelanced on the side, and I had really never heard of that before. So I started investigating that for myself and learned, well, gosh, I could be pitching articles to magazines and seeing my name in print and getting paid for it. And so from about 1994, I was never not freelancing on the side, but it took me a long time to figure out how to actually earn a living from it. And partly that hinged on the development of the World Wide Web and then getting a nursing degree. And I discovered, because even as a nurse, I was still freelancing because I love writing and I would never give it up. And I discovered there was this huge demand, unbeknownst to me, for clinicians who could write.
Right. Yeah.
And so I sometimes say my nursing degree turned out to be the best thing I ever did for my writing career, because that's when I was finally able to not only make a living at it, but yeah, I really did build a 6-figure business at it. So.
And so now you're teaching other nurses. Do you find that it's a big thing with nurses that we want to do it?
Absolutely. I can literally quantify that, because the first full year I was doing RN to writer, which is my business now. Yes, teaching, coaching, mentoring other nurses who want to become freelance writers. Our first full year of operation, our gross sales were about $13,000. So far in 2021, we've done $1 million. So there is huge demand by nurses who are interested in writing as a career path. But honestly, I started receiving emails from nurses clear back in 2013, 2014. You know, they would see my name, my byline on articles on sites like WebMD, and they would look me up and send me emails going, wait a minute, nobody told me I could be a writer. Can you help me?
Yes.
And I always did, because I'm very big on, I just read a marvelous quote that I can't quote verbatim, but it said something like, when you arrive, don't close the door, hold the door open for others. And that is very much that's how I operate. And it's like, I find it thrilling to help other nurses, first of all, discover that they can be writers and get paid for it. And secondly, help them succeed at it just by sharing what I've learned, you know, over the decades of doing it.
So just to jump around a little bit, I know you've transitioned into writing and you're no longer in the hospital, but looking back on your time, you know, as a direct care person, is there any part of nursing life per se that you would like to see change?
Well, yes. Just in general, healthcare as an industry needs to vastly improve working conditions across the board for nurses, period, full stop. I, in particular, witnessed and was subjected to a lot of bullying. I was basically bullied out of nursing. That was one of the reasons I left, not only because my writing career was doing well, but because I couldn't take the atmosphere. Coming from a business background, working in large companies and institutions, I more than once would stand on the floor of the PACU and say to a colleague, I cannot believe that person is getting away with that behavior in this moment, because if they did that in a corporate setting, security would literally be taking their badge and walking them to their car. And that stuff has to stop in our industry. That is not, it's very toxic.
Yeah.
And I don't blame nurses for that necessarily. I blame the whole culture of healthcare. It has to change. Some nurses call me out for RN to writer, saying you are luring nurses away from the bedside just when we need them. And I think to myself, honey, nurses don't need me to lure them away from the bedside. They have been leaving for a long time.
In droves. You cannot lure somebody away from something they really want to do. So
exactly. And it's like, I admire all the nurses who have been going through this pandemic, because especially under the working conditions that exist, my heart goes out to them. I don't know how they have managed it.
Yeah. I suspect that a lot of them don't know how they have managed it either. It's just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and just keep going.
Yes. And I think also not feeling like they have choices.
Yeah.
And I mean, freelance writing is self-employment, so that's really not a choice or an option for some people in some circumstances, but I'm just happy that it is an option for, I would say, most people.
Yeah. That's it can be very, very difficult. Yes. So what would you say is your greatest achievement so far?
Oh my goodness. In life in general, well, I would say the thing I'm most proud of has nothing to do with my business.
Okay.
It has to do with the fact that I take care of my mom, who is elderly and has dementia. That's by far the most rewarding thing that I do. It's also the most difficult thing that I do.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm proudest of that. I would say, though, a close second is building this little business, RN to writer, and serving so many of my fellow nurses, giving them an option to get their sanity back and get control of their schedule and make a good living, through self-employment. That is incredibly gratifying. Really, honestly, this is the legacy I want to leave to nursing and to writing, which are my two loves of my life from a career standpoint. Is I really want to, I want nurses to own the healthcare communication space, and I want to be the one who gets us there.
Yeah.
And that will make me very proud indeed to see that happen.
Yeah. I like that word you just used, own, because there are so many things that we can own, but we don't own. Because I guess because we don't even realize that we can.
Well, I think that's true. When you're an employee, it's hard to own your career.
Mhm.
You are subjected to the whims of your employer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we all have some control over our responses to situations.
Mhm.
We all have choices we can make. Sometimes the choices are horrible, though. You can't just up and quit your job if you have small children. You can't lose your benefits. You can't
Mhm.
lose your
Yeah.
salary.
Mhm.
We kind of get locked into that. I mean, realistically, that's not a choice. Theoretically, yes, you can. You
Yeah.
can ditch all that. But no, I think that giving nurses autonomy within the healthcare system
Exactly.
would be an excellent start on improving working conditions,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
letting nurses own what they do more.
Mhm. Mhm.
But definitely in the writing world, I want us to own healthcare communications. Nurses, I don't think there's anybody in the world better
Better.
positioned to write about any kind of healthcare topics than nurses, whether it's on the consumer side. We spend more time with patients and families than any other healthcare professional. So we know their concerns, you know, but also on the business side, for businesses marketing to healthcare systems.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're in the trenches of healthcare systems. We know the pain points of the people involved in making decisions, and we
Yeah.
understand chain of command and all that.
And all that. Yeah.
So there's nobody who can do this better than nurses. And I just want to put us out there as the standard for excellence in healthcare communications. Nurses.
Awesome. 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 So I've started, Elizabeth, collecting these words because as I speak to nurses and typically, as with you, I typically ask people why they're nurses, and I realize a lot of people come to this profession from take many different paths, and I wondered what made them come, and so I've started collecting words. I've started asking nurses, what is if you had to describe the most essential quality of a nurse in one word, what would it be?
Compassion.
Compassion. Your word is compassion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I agree. Compassion. Nurses do have to be. And it's, do you think we're compassionate to each other?
I think that's a very interesting and insightful question. I think many of the nurses I have known are very compassionate to each other and less compassionate to themselves a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that nurses still tend to put everyone else ahead of themselves.
Yes.
And I don't think that that's a compassionate approach to yourself. And I also believe that if you don't show yourself compassion, it's harder to be there for those other people that you love, like family members, but also want to serve, like patients and coworkers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I agree. Absolutely, I agree. So, would you have any words of advice or inspiration for somebody who wants to be a nurse today?
Yes, but let me just gather my thoughts for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to, if you're going into nursing today, to understand the realities of healthcare in the United States, how it works, what its priorities and goals are. I think it's important to succeed as a nurse today. I think it's important to set aside the, I'm going to say, the fantasy vision you may have of nursing as the lady with the lamp, the lady in the shining white, who's the angel of mercy coming in. Because unfortunately, that is not always the reality.
Yeah.
And I think having that balance of accepting the reality that healthcare today is much more, in my estimation, is much more served up like a service,
Yeah,
like any other
yeah,
kind of service. Balancing that with recognizing and seizing those moments that where you do get to be the angel in white for people, and really appreciating those moments when you get them.
yeah,
I think then you can, I think the most successful nurses have an intellectual aspect to their nursing and a soulful aspect to their
yeah.
nursing. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't take the time to nurture that soulful aspect when you get those little moments, I think then you kind of do risk getting into compassion fatigue, because you're
Yeah,
all in your right brain making decisions and not really thinking about the person there.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. It can consume you. It can consume you.
it can, and it can just make you feel like, you know, you're a server in a restaurant, or that you're not really having an impact on these people. I think all of us in nursing, to some degree, go into it because we want to have a positive impact on people's lives. And although I've been out of nursing clinically for a decade now, even at the time I left, there was starting to be that turn towards making all decisions not with the person's best interest necessarily in mind, but with the bottom line
Yeah,
in mind.
yeah, yeah.
So I think, like I say, accepting the reality of how things are today is going to be crucial for anybody coming out of nursing school,
Yeah,
going into this profession.
yeah, yeah. There's one thing that I'm hoping, or perhaps I'm counting on, as the time passes, nurses are becoming or seeking higher and higher and higher education, which may actually put them in a better position to be part of the decision-making process and the policy-making process. And hopefully we remember what it was like in the trenches and make decisions that actually benefit and serve those people who are coming along behind us. I really hope that.
I think you're probably correct. I am an advocate for education. I do think that getting more nurses with higher degrees into the structure of the healthcare system can only be beneficial. My hope, or perhaps my fear, is that they take their nursing attitude into that business environment and not let themselves get consumed by the business education end of a lot of, like, if somebody's going to get a master's in healthcare administration, to keep that nursing center of, you know, we all sort of make, I don't want to say make fun of, but in nursing school, you know, we kind of joked about the nursing process and care plans, but, you know, keeping that nursing process at the center could make a huge positive impact on the business side of healthcare.
Yeah, yeah. And I really hope it does. I really hope it does. Elizabeth, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Oh, I just thank you for having me on, and I hope if any of your listeners are interested in finding out more about writing, that they'll come and check us out. But I'm just mostly honored to be a guest on your podcast, Dale. Thank you.
I am so thankful that you're here. I appreciate it so much. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Have a great day.